Hey everybody, welcome to the People Process Progress Podcast, episode 10. Today we have a very special episode on this International Women's Day 2020 with a very special woman in my life, my wife of 18 years, Wendi Pannell. Welcome to the show, Wendi.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yes, it's weird because we're at the first guest in the studio, which means in our home office at our house. But again, you know, in keeping with the show, I want folks to learn more about Wendi that don't already know her. So if you already know her, awesome. If you don't, bonus, you'll get to learn more about her. And as we do, talk about the process, particularly on International Women's Day, the process that Wendi's undergone for her professional life, mixed with personal life, being a successful wife, mom, businesswoman, and then share her progress, share her strengths, her failures, you know, whatever that we get into, but to help everyone from the young woman just getting out of college or getting into the workforce, whether you went to college or not, or folks that have been in the workforce for a bit and just really, you know, share some tips, tricks, and lessons learned. So Wendi, I know your story a bit after 18 years, but welcome to the show again. Where did you grow up? And which is quite a few places, but share with us where you're from and where you grew up.
Yeah, so I was born in Shenandoah Valley. So started in Virginia, but we moved around quite a bit because my dad was in the nuclear world. So whenever someone asks me where I grew up, it's kind of hard to say, and I rattle off Virginia, South Carolina, Missouri, Massachusetts, Washington State. But for most of my formidable years, I would say it was in Virginia, in Broadway, Virginia, 6th grade through graduation.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. And he was in the Navy?
He was also in the Navy.
Yes.
Navy. Yes.
So we've got some strong Navy. As you all may remember, I was in the Navy. Wendy's father was in the Navy. My father was in the Navy. My grandmother was in the Navy. Her grandfather was in the Navy. So
yeah.
Who got Navy? We might as well share how we met, right? Can I include that right up front?
Yeah.
So our dads have known each other for 40-something years. And we'll get into this probably in your story, especially coming out of college, getting into your professional life. But I was getting out of the Navy or just out of the Navy. I think getting out or just out.
You were just out.
Just out. And still in the area, still in Rosslyn, Virginia, working on IT. So I'd gotten away from being a corpsman, gotten into IT. Dad says, hey, my friend's daughter is in the area and, of course, is a single guy. Not everyone jumps at that, I'll say. I was into hanging out, big time into video games. That's a whole other episode probably. Video games and their effect on marriage or not getting married. And then one day we met, Renaissance Festival. So if you've seen any background pictures of the show and you see the battle axe on the wall, that's from there. And then we got married not that long afterwards, within the year.
Yeah. We met in October. We were engaged in February and married in September. So less than 12 months.
Right. And I touched on that in one of the previous episodes. So 2001, so 4 days after September 11th attacks, which, you know, again, thank you very much to our family and friends that drove down, and pretty amazing. So grew up in Broadway, grew up in Missouri a little bit, and a few other places. And then you wound up going to where at school? Virginia
Tech. So we are back in my stomping grounds.
Right. We're going to cheers it up a little bit here. Cheers to Women's Day. Cheers to Blacksburg.
And Hokies.
Go Hokies, absolutely. And so before you got to college, you were a cheerleader in high school, did the high school thing, right?
Yeah.
Interestingly, kind of the same mascot in high school and college, right?
Yeah.
So turkey theme. Did you know you wanted to major in something technology-wise?
No.
Or like information systems or anything?
No. So I want to back up just 1 second in high school. So I think this was formidable for me. I tried out for the softball team. The first year I didn't make it because I had mono. Second year I was like, I've been an assistant. Like you carry balls and bats and stuff.
Right.
The next year I tried out. I didn't make it. And the coach told me, Wendi, you're just not an athlete.
Oh.
Yeah. So there were conversations with my parents. And I think that's important because that was, like, I still think about that today. So for me, lesson is watch what you say to kids because they hold on to that stuff. Went to tech. Actually, I was convinced I wanted to go into hotel restaurant management. So I actually started my major in hotel restaurant management, did an internship after my freshman year in Georgia during the 96 Olympics and came home and changed my major because I realized when I was there that my success was going to be dependent on people that didn't really want to be doing their job, right? Housekeepers, respect your housekeepers in a hotel. The whole restaurant area. And it was also tough because it was the Olympics, but no one just seemed very happy. And so I kind of saw that after my internship and came back and changed my major.
Do you incorporate that from seeing the environment of the people that worked there? So the workforce isn't happy, right? Super hard job. People probably do not treat them well all the time. Leave the room with random whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think about that now as an executive leader kind of person?
Yes.
So, that level of seeing a workforce that's not happy that drove you away from that industry, that now in information technology, hey, there's our dog.
Yes, so I definitely would take that experience and bring it into probably my job now more than ever.
Nice. So, yeah, and I guess that's kind of jumping ahead to get into there, kind of where you are now. So you decided, yep, that's not for me. So how did you get into computers? Like your dad was early into computers. I think we had some early adopting, old school Macs and PCs and floppy disks and all that good stuff.
Yes.
So did that help drive you into your
it was just
management science and information technology as I read your diploma on the wall?
Yes. My dad was very supportive of me. So he had a home business basically and some engineers in our basement. And so at lunchtime in the summer, my brother and I would go down there and play video games with him. My dad also let me play with one of what I think is the first laptop computers. It was a Grid. And I'm not sure I knew what I was doing, but it was around, and so I was very comfortable with it. I also still remember writing out Hello World in one of my 6th, 7th, or 8th grade classes. So it was just something easy.
Was it like an early programming thing?
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah. But I don't remember kind of what the who kind of said, hey, management science might be a way that you want to go. I will tell you, I took advantage of the counselors there to kind of maybe help guide me in one direction, because I was going from one school to a completely different school. So they're completely different professors and buildings at Tech.
Did you have to apply to change or no?
Yes. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, that's another, I think, evolution in kind of the process in education is, right, a lot of us think, I want to do this one thing, then have an experience or get better advice or just change your mind or get a gut feeling or something.
Yeah.
And then to know, okay, so that's going to be a process just changing. So make sure, because you only probably want to do that so many times as well, I would imagine, right? Like changing your major or jumping around or.
Yeah, change is hard and it's exhausting, especially as you get older. But the biggest thing, and I tell anyone that I can, especially young adults, try it out. You have the opportunity in college to try it. Don't go home and blow your summer. I mean, you can do fun internships, but try out what you think you want to do, because for me, it was a game changer.
And what year was that of college?
1995.
Or
96.
what year in college were you? What?
Oh, it was after my freshman year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so pretty early on. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And were you able to transfer a lot of those credits to the?
Yeah, because everything the first few years is such
general
basics, like weed out classes anyways, so.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then you worked locally for a bit, right at the bank here while you were in school?
Yeah, I worked at Dietz, which is an ice cream shop. Best thing ever. And then a few years into college, I got a job at Bank of Blacksburg.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Which is neat, because coming back here, you've run into some of the same people, right?
Yes.
Yeah, which worked, helped in our transition coming from the Richmond area.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
And that was probably another influence in my life. So again, I was not as a teller. I was working in the loan department in Bank of Blacksburg. Work with some awesome women there, and a gentleman who saw that I was in school, but I showed up, I worked hard, I did good things. So actually, before I graduated, I'd gotten a job, and that's kind of what you did back then, is you got a job. Before I graduated, I got laid off because the company was downsizing.
Oh, wow.
So they had hired me, given me a bonus, and then laid me off before I actually graduated.
This was your an IT job?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was going to move to North Carolina, actually.
Oh.
And so I didn't have a job going out of school. So the president at the bank kind of heard my woe is me story and helped me find a job.
Nice.
So he connected me with someone who's very famous around here, Mary Miller, at Interactive Design and Development here in Blacksburg.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, so I started my career actually in a local company.
Oh, that's awesome. See, the journey of getting to where you want to be is, a bunch of hops in different industries that you can still apply, in whatever industry you begin in. I would imagine the exposure to the various walks of life and people while you were at the bank was great experience, even being so young, right? So you get an exposure in college, right? Largely other college kids, professors. But then when you're at a bank, you get anyone from the farmer, right, to the business owner, to school loan students. Just like in business now, you get the full gamut of all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I was filing loan papers.
Wow.
So, loan papers used to be on paper and you folded them in a trifold and then put them in this little like card organizer that looked like out of a library.
Oh, wow.
And I answered phones. So, and I did some paper processing, I guess. It was very basic work,
Sure.
but working and, being in an office environment were all huge helps. And networking. Like I didn't know it was networking at the time, but working hard and being somebody that was dependable, I think got me to that next job.
Nice.
Yeah.
So to that, you're still in Blacksburg, stayed there after graduated a little bit. And then what took you to your next location where we would meet?
Yes. So there was a part of me that still wanted to get out of Virginia, like go to the big city.
Wow.
So I think I had applied for some jobs and actually got an interview with Hewlett Packard.
Oh, wow.
And so
I'm acting surprised like I don't know.
I know. Hewlett Packard hired me, and that was an amazing experience. I ended up moving to Rockville, Maryland, and worked out of that office for maybe a little over a year. I was not there very long before 9/11, and then we met.
Right.
And but after 9/11, I had gotten laid off from Hewlett Packard. But Hewlett Packard was huge because one, the things I did there ran the gamut. I pulled landlines in data center floors.
Oh, wow.
I created SQL databases to manage acquisitions that we had done. Really, the whole time we were engaged, I traveled back and forth every week from Washington area to Atlanta.
That was awesome.
I know.
Well, hey, but if you're going to start a relationship early and you get the hard stuff out of the way,
Yes.
there's a lot to go through.
Yes. I also, so when that job was over, when you're a consultant, if you're on the bench, it's not good. So they decided to, because I had a little bit of a technical background of programming in college, they trained me on Unix, HP Unix.
Wow, yeah, I remember
which,
that.
if you're not a computer nerd, that is like command line. It is, it's like DOS prompt. It's just the Linux. People probably know Linux. So they trained me on HP UX and then asked me to teach people, which I
Gotcha.
loved. Yeah.
Internal Hewlett Packard people?
No, external customers that
wow.
were using Unix for their own.
I think I remember those big giant books.
Those big giant
Unix
books, and I brought home like Unix systems to practice and play. So like big, what are those things called? Stand up like towers and big monitors at home to practice.
And was Unix largely a server based thing, or could it also just regular operating system?
Regular operating system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I was more on the DOS Windows kind of person.
Yeah.
But I do remember the giant Unix boxes and things.
Yeah.
Or, back then, although now our oldest son has a giant tower computer, but
For gaming.
it glows and it's extremely powerful for games. It's a good Christmas. So you're teaching Unix and unemployment.
Unemployment. So we had just got married. So we were married in September. I think you got meningitis in October and I was laid off in November.
Right.
So the first 6 months of our marriage, I was a stay-at-home wife. That was interesting. But what I did do is I took a class in Oracle UX.
Gotcha.
Because I thought that was maybe the way to go. And then I also learned to develop a website. So I actually
All right.
developed that website for my best friend's mom's restaurant. And I just stopped supporting that thing a couple of years ago.
Right.
Actually, when their restaurant got bought.
And so you were laid off in 2002, right? Was the next year? It wasn't, or was it right after 9/11?
It was right after 9/11. Yeah.
Same year.
So September, October. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So same year.
Wow. Yeah. So that one thing as far as a process of development, right? So going from small towns, great school, right? Great people that helped you out, knowing you had, stumbling blocks with letting go before you even got to the place, but giving you opportunities, working your butt off, and then big company, and there's so many memes, sayings, whatever out there, right? Companies will replace you in a heartbeat. Truth, right? When the bottom line's not there, numbers get cut, and those numbers equal people.
Yeah.
And so for you, though, to look at that and then say, okay, what's next, right? Not sit around and mope the whole time. And there's some downs for sure. It sucks.
Yeah.
But to take advantage of it, how did you come to think about, hey, I need to do something proactively to keep my skills going forward, or give me a mission, right? Because it was like 6 months.
Yeah.
Right. It was a while.
Oh, I'm not very good at being idle. Still to this day, I'm not good at being idle. So I had to find something to do. And online learning was not as big of a thing there at that time.
Right.
So I had to go to a class to get some training. And there was also programs that HP gave me to help work through that transition, but no one was really hiring at the time. So I think that just not being able to be idle for me is just part of my personality. So right. I tried out different things until I eventually found a job.
Right. So if you're out there in a tough spot now, right, got let go, couldn't, just decided, hey, this company's not for me anymore. You got to keep moving forward, though. You got to look for something. You got to take advantage of it. Sometimes that costs money, which certainly those classes did.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's taking advantage of the networks you have, it sounds like, right, is a good opportunity there. And in the moment, it is hard because it is sad. It is hard when you're applying, right, and you're not getting hired. And at the time, too, that's a pretty big milestone for the world, let alone the nation, let alone us, of economic hit and things like that. But, there's been others as well. But, it's you just have to pull yourself up, lay your bootstraps. And, for us right now, it's easy-ish to say that, but we went through it. You in particular. But, it's especially if you're, a woman and you're married, or you have a partner, or, whatever, you both go through it together. And it's a lot of work, but, I'm very proud of you for the work you did there. I think our son just yelled at us, but with that. So you kept working, you got some classes, you did the trainings, kept shooting resumes out there, kept reaching out to folks. You also had a great mentor at HP that's still a great friend today, right? So that's pretty awesome. We'll probably circle back to that maybe later.
Yeah.
And so where did you end up?
So I ended up at another small software company in DC as a project manager. And I didn't, the PMP wasn't as big then. So I had technical experience, and I also probably, I'm going to call it a gift for lack of a better word, but an ability to translate the technical into the end user, so I could explain things well. So I think that came through in my interviews for this company. But they were basically working with nonprofits to develop software for different companies. So they hired me as a project manager, and it was so much fun because at the time we were both young and newly married, and I worked in DC, so taking the metro to DC, and you and I would
meet you out.
We would carpool in to work. Was a lot of fun.
Right.
So I gained a lot of experience there, made some good connections, but the environment, I cannot put my finger to this day on what it was. Actually, I can a little bit, but it was just toxic. I was getting good experience, and I loved working with my customers. But when I came back to the office, it just didn't feel very welcoming. And there was actually another woman there that I could clearly tell did not like me. And in hindsight, I feel like that was a little bit of competition, which we, in support of International Women's Day, support your fellow women. But I did not stay there very long and ended up looking for another job because it just wasn't right for me. Love my customers, but coming back into the office was awful.
Which speaks a lot, right? If you're more comfortable, if you're happier outside the office than in,
Yeah.
then maybe it is time on your own
Yeah.
to get out, right? So happiness but do it set up for success.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Unless there's something egregious happening, you're being harassed, those kind of things.
Yeah.
You still got to get paid and put food on the table.
Yes.
Right.
And also if you just screw it, I'm out, you're putting extra pressure on yourself. Like I've told you and I several times, we are getting paid right now. So let's, find your happiness outside of work.
Not that we're not happy.
Yes.
Where we're working.
This has been over the years, but I'm saying
yeah.
Because everyone, even if you are super happy, are going to go through those times of
Oh, yeah.
slumps.
Yep.
So just don't set yourself up for, making yourself crazy. If you are going to look, find another job first.
Yeah. That's a huge thing. And even if you're finding something outside, that's the balance of, I really love this thing, but I still need to commit to the job and I need to balance it out and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So when you got out of there, how'd you set yourself up for success for the next organization that you went to?
This was another case where I found another small company, went in as a project manager. And this was a very small company. They were software as a service, online, dealing in the home building industry. So it was weird because it was software, but it was, our main customers were home builders. So got a job there as a project manager. That was also a ton of fun because being a small company, you kind of wear all the hats. And I did, through that company, I had the opportunity to do a lot of different roles in that company, from project manager to at the end being vice president of learning and our consultant group. So that was a matter of just working really hard. I traveled a lot because we would do on-site visits with our customers. That's also where we started having kids.
Right.
So we had Logan when I worked there. Had great leadership and bosses, learned a lot about Agile and software development, and started to really learn about the business side of things.
How was so again with, talking about you and your process, but on Women's Day, so as a young woman coming up from college, primarily in the IT field, really, like IT proper, did you find, how was the balance of kind of men to women in the workplace? Because then jumping into the construction industry changed drastically, right? So
double whammy.
IT proper, pretty balanced, still male dominated, right? But when you jump into the construction industry, which is way male dominated, what challenges did you see there going, and let's, be honest, the folks that work in IT are very different than construction folks.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So not better or worse, just different kinds of people.
They
Construction, a little more rough and tumble, right? Smart people in their own rights. But what did you experience when you jumped into the construction industry?
Well, even at the company, I was probably one of a handful of women there. Oftentimes the only woman in a room. When I went to visit construction sites or mainly their offices, definitely male dominated, but actually in the office there would be a lot of women. But I was interfacing with owners of these companies because, one, I'm either trying to continue to sell professional services to them and or say, this is the way you need to do this implementation. So, I was very lucky because thinking about the construction world, it could have been very sexist, the whistling and hey baby. Right. And I can say over my career, I have been very fortunate to only really have to do with that a few times. And also, I don't know if it's because my dad had a construction company when we were younger. So I was kind of used to
that environment.
And right. I think it's also just how I carried myself. I carried myself as you're not going to say that and get away with me. And it wasn't that I was rude. I was just, I think I exuded confidence that that was never a question.
We talk about that, particularly as a dad of 3 boys, right? I want to build them up. You're always worried about, are they going to get in scraps, all that, right? It's going to happen, that kind of stuff. And just in general in life, security wise, and we've talked to my parents about this, et cetera, and it's, I've said it, but particularly like Jordan Peterson, who I listened to, who we went and saw in Richmond, actually, head up, shoulders back, we're paying attention. And you see so many people, especially now more so, head down in their phone, leaned over. But even in the workplace, there's a scale of confidence, right? So when you walk into a room, head up, shoulders back, you look people in the eye, you shake their hand really strong. Yeah. For me, I'm 5'11", 200 pounds, right? So I'm a pretty decent sized guy. I'm pretty confident. But that's developed too. For a woman, would you recommend the same thing, right? When you are, whether you're just getting out of college, whether you've been in the workforce 20 years, 30, whatever,
right?
Is you mentioned how you carry yourself, whether it's around construction folks and again, they're not bad folks. It's just, it's
just different.
Yeah, it's just different.
I would admit it.
Or at a software company or pulling cable or something like that. Would you recommend kind of out of the gate that folks target that as they develop their professional skills and personal, really, to try and portray and then actually be more confident?
Yes. But I will say, I think I've realized I grew up with parents that helped to make me confident. Mm-hmm. So I know that helped a lot. But the other thing that always helps me is I always want to know the what and why of things. So I learned a lot. So when I would go into those construction offices, and even if they were like, dang, she's, smoking, I'm sure that's what they were thinking. Mm-hmm. When I opened my mouth and I talked to them and I was trying to help them, oftentimes like shock on their face, like, oh, you know what you're talking about. So with that, there just came respect as well. And, in any office environment, especially with consultants, that rumor of, hey, she knows what she's talking about. And I was helping them, always help that. But I think the general confidence, and I see that a lot now, is about how you were brought up, the perspective that you have, and the perception that you think people have of you. But I think as leaders, we need to help with that. And I'm dealing with a very different generation now that was brought up differently or has different feelings. So I'm trying to figure out how to help the younger generation now with that confidence, because it's just not the same as when I was growing. But I don't think their parents did anything different, but something in this world has changed the confidence level of our younger generations.
So to that, right, and really what we get around, because folks say the millennials, right, and oftentimes, sometimes it's negative the way folks say that. They're like, the millennials. Well, yeah, they're millennials. They could also school you in technology. They can it's really, how do you work with different people?
Right.
We were like, Gen X was like, oh, there's Gen Xers and on and on and on before, right? So it's just different technology in place at the time of these different kids, et cetera. And parenting, a huge thing, which we partner, I think, excellently to our own horn. But to that point, I think, so let's say someone did grow up, their confidence was not boosted, right? What can that person do if they didn't have the advantage that you did, right? Parents that lifted you up, they were confident folks. They encouraged you to even learn how to, elbow people in the nose if they get out of line. But what can they do? And part of what I'm leading to really is the mentorship that you talk about. So what you're trying to do now, did you find that mentors along the way helped you with that in the professional setting, in addition to the personal, that your parents provided you?
Yes, definitely. I will say it was a little, I have mentors that I can call out and give kudos to, but I think they would even agree I had less because I was a woman in technology, that I could kind of look up to and reach out to.
You mean less mentors in the industry?
Mm-hmm,
okay.
For sure. So, when I look up or even look across, there's not as many women that I could really kind of lean on. But the ones I did have and I met, I really, not in a creepy way, but latched onto.
Right.
And used them to kind of what I now call like my board of directors, people that I could reach out to. But the other thing I think I really believe in to help build confidence is to, if you're not feeling confident, it's probably because you're doing something you're not passionate about. So finding something you're passionate about and just learn the heck out of it. Because as you grow to know a topic or subject and become an expert in that area, your confidence just grows because people look to you to get that advice. So becoming knowledgeable about something you're passionate in will help your confidence.
And if you're not lucky enough, I would say too, because I've had pretty much from the time I joined the Navy to now, almost everywhere, honestly, very strong women leaders, right? From my mom through like my leadership in the Navy, through Discovery, through all the other places, which is awesome. And I love it. And it's benefited me a ton, including you. But you have to go find that leadership sometime if it doesn't come find you.
Oh,
right.
yes.
So, I think whether you're a man or a woman, you can't be going, oh, no one's helping me, I'm not doing this. Well,
go find it.
Right.
You got to put work into it. If you're not putting work into it, sure, you can be lucky a few times, but if you don't go out and seek it and ask for it, do not expect magic to happen.
Right. So no magic's going to happen. Got to put the work in. Get up out of your cube, out of your office, out of your whatever. So you're doing construction, traveling all over the place. I'm getting much better at online video games while I'm hanging out with my pals.
Yeah.
And this is when we were in Arizona, right?
Yeah.
For a second half of that part. And then we moved back to the Richmond, have our child.
Yeah.
And for you professionally, then you have an outstanding opportunity with another organization down the road that you link up with, that you were with right up until we moved.
Yes. So I had my first child, figured out work-life balance. I thought it was work-life balance at the time. Also was able to take maternity leave, which was nice. And the company was doing well, but we ended after our second child. We ended up getting bought out by a company that, again, I just wasn't loving, didn't love the culture. So after our second child, I took extended maternity leave and went and got my PMP because I knew I wanted to get another a job.
PMP's in the house.
Yes. Super nerdy about that. We're going to create a Kanban board later.
Oh, my.
So I knew I wanted out, and so I felt like I needed my PMP because, when they ask you to do resumes, they're like, put details on there, put your success rates. And honestly, in the home building industry, they weren't all successful stories.
Wow.
Because another kind of struggle and something I learned a lot at that company was that, the building industry, the home building industry, right, took a nosedive.
Yeah.
So those weren't all success stories that I could put on my resume. So I felt like I needed to get something else to leverage. And so I went and got my PMP,
right,
which is not an easy thing to do. I remember taking the PMP exam and then running off to Logan's soccer game.
Nice.
So I took it. It was like early in the morning, and then we had to run off to Logan's soccer game. But I passed it. I found it right away. So I was very excited for Logan's soccer game.
Nice.
But once I did that, another, what I will say, kind of lucky thing happened to me, and that was a family member that worked at GE told me that they were opening a GE office in my area. Come to find out, it was literally in our backyard.
Like a mile away.
Yeah. So with that, I did some research. I was like, what am I going to do for GE? Like, I'm coming from this small company. So I did a little bit of research online, found out who was opening the site through news articles.
Oh, wow.
Our family member did not tell me names. And then I reached out to her on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm in the area. This is my experience. I've got my PMP. And
Boom.
like within maybe a week or two, I had an interview and a job offer from GE.
Employee number one.
Yes, that's right. Although Mr. Puckett would argue with me on that. But anyways.
We'll give it to you. It's Women's Day.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure,
okay.
he would give
and
that to you.
he was hired not there, or maybe he didn't live there at the time. I don't know. Anyways. Yeah. So that was an amazing experience because that gave me a whole new industry to get involved with, which was cybersecurity.
And GE, is that a small startup company?
Yeah. General Electric.
Yeah.
When people would ask me where I'd work, I wouldn't say GE, I would say General Electric, and that was weird for them because I felt like I needed to spell it out.
Right.
But GE was much bigger than I ever realized. Like, they are not just an appliance company. They were aviation, healthcare, banking at the time. And so they were starting their security operations center right there in our backyard. So the job I also applied for, I had to Google many of the names in the job description because they were security focused solutions. And I didn't know what they were.
That's a good point. So you had hands-on pulling cable technical experience, software experience, programming experience, not InfoSec experience, but as a PMP, and really, again, we've done the whole certification versus actual project management skills, coordination, all that. But a person that can actually get stuff done and has your PMP.
Yeah.
To me, it doesn't matter as much except knowing terminology, right? But you could bring teams together. You could have your pros tell you what needed to happen. But how was that transition? Because that is a whole different, big, super deep world of information technology or information security, rather, to get into. So how did that go? How was that? Because you went from construction to information security.
I know. I've always used the saying that, a project is a project is a project, just like a toilet is a toilet is a toilet. So you can kind of take it to different industries, which is why I always like to promote the project management field, because it allows you to go through different seasons of your life, maybe in different industries.
Right.
This was another case, and you and I have kind of made the agreement over the years where when we take on a new job, one gives more than the other. So like first 3 to 6 months, depending on the job, we're like, hey, I'm going to be a little absent at home because we're busting butt to try to get to the place that we're comfortable and we're really good.
Right.
So that was very helpful. You, with 2 kids at home, allowed me to really dig in. And again, it was about gaining knowledge.
And as a cancer survivor.
Sorry,
I played that card.
Yeah. We both play that card now.
Can.
So that was helpful, and I traveled a lot to get to meet my stakeholders and the people I was working with. But the other advantage I had there is a huge woman leader supporter.
Right.
And then several people.
Meaning she's not huge. She was hugely helpful.
She would smack you for that. So she was very helpful. And some other, actually one was a consultant that was there that really helped me to kind of find my way. And because one of the hardest things at a big company like GE is the org chart.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Where do you sit? Why do you care? Why do I have to talk to you type of thing. So that was probably the biggest difficulty, was learning the org chart and who was engaged, and learning why and who I needed to engage different people. The technology, again, because I just have some natural tendencies towards technology and understanding what they were for. And I could also Google things and figure it out. That wasn't the hard part. It was more about, bringing the right people together, because this was also, I had been rolling out projects. Now I'm like, why did GE hire me? I was rolling out projects at a software company, maybe multiple, but I also did other things like consulting and the leadership training. But at GE, I was rolling out a piece of software globally across 350,000 employees across every single country, every profit and loss, center at GE. So scale was like no other.
Right. But did you find you use the same skill sets?
Yes.
Right. So smaller, bigger, if your core skill sets are strong, kind of like it's foundational for what we've talked about. But you can translate that, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's adjustment because you're like, oh my God, that's a huge impact.
Yeah.
So when you're getting this stuff done, can we just jump back for a second? So 2 kids, you have awesome support at the house. As a mom, though, as a working mom, successful professional, how was your transition at work as a mom?
The company before GE was supportive of, like, if I had to take sick days or things like that. So that was never an issue. But they were also learning how to be supportive of moms, because there weren't a lot of moms there. They're mostly men.
Gotcha.
So they didn't really notice, say no or anything. They just supported me, which was
nice.
Great.
Yeah.
Then when I got to GE, they also had great things in place. But I feel like a lot of that is very hazy for me now. Like probably those first 6 years.
Right.
Also about creating that village. So I remember calling on friends, or like your sister was there.
Yeah.
We would just kind of go back and forth, taking those turns on staying home with the kids or whatever.
Sure.
But I could also work from home if I needed. So it it was really kind of finding that balance. And there were days that I chose my job over the kids, but I could do that because I knew
Right.
somebody else was there to do whatever.
What about that kind of working mom guilt?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I don't know how deep you want to go. But
yeah, I still have working mom guilt. And the other thing I will talk about is after both of my kids, actually with my first one, I had postpartum depression after. But with my second one, I had postpartum depression while I was pregnant. So, look, and you're going to get me to cry on your podcast. So that was a huge adjustment
Right.
because not just like the regular mom guilt I now have every day, but it was like deep mental, crazy guilt while I was pregnant.
Right.
So, but I had great doctors and again, you and family that said, we'll get through this.
Right.
And I used many different methods to help me through that chemically because it is a chemical imbalance.
Sure.
And then, once we had both of them, we had great childcare, which we were very blessed to find.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, but there were still days that, especially when I traveled, that I felt like I should be there. And I wasn't, or missing, recitals or, plays and things like that.
Sure.
But my kids know that I love them.
Right.
They know that I am there, and there are other things I do to make up for that.
And it's, one, thanks, because to talk about that and be open is not everyone does that. And I would say it's also not as rare as people think.
No.
Right. So the difference is just exposure, who talks about it, who's open about it, that kind of stuff. But it's normal. We've talked about on, when this was called Between Slides, and some of the folks talked about with other mental, either challenges, illnesses, traumatic things, chemical imbalances, whatever, right? The talking about it helps. The not being ashamed of it helps and is true, right? So ladies out there, if that's something that you're experiencing, that you have, that you're experiencing now, ask for help, get help. There's a lot of resources. Reach out to us, if you don't know where to go.
Yeah.
We're not experts, but we can, kind of share what, we went through and what helped Wendi in particular. But that's a huge deal, I think, is to bring it in the open, right? Yeah. Whether it's just, oh, I missed this recital to, full blown postpartum is a big deal, and it's very real, and it's, nothing to be ashamed of at all.
No. So 2 big things. Employee assistance program. I took advantage of that, which is usually 6 free counseling sessions that you can get,
right.
Which got me on the right track and also gave me a number of somebody I could call and worth every penny. Although for the 6, it was free.
Right. Yeah.
And I still tout that to today to anyone that will listen or I think need it, or new moms especially. But also, when I worked for the other company and we had moved to Richmond, I worked from home.
Right.
And I was a working mom, so I didn't have many friends. A lot of my friends were your sister's friends, right? Like she brought me into that crowd. Yeah. But when the kids went to...
Which was a great village for everything.
Oh my gosh, they still are a great village.
Yep, absolutely.
When I first went to daycare, there were a few moms there that, I just kind of... And I'm not an introvert, but I was never comfortable just like going up to random people.
Right.
But as I got older and got more confident, both at work and just being a mom, and I realized that other moms were going through this, I became more willing to go up to somebody and say, hey, I have no idea what I'm supposed to bring to class for my kids tomorrow. Can you help me out?
Right.
And that started a relationship with one person, which turned into a relationship with 4 women. And we're still in contact, because all of our kids went through preschool together.
Right.
And that village is irreplaceable. It is something that will take you through. It gets you through. And a lot of them were working moms, so we also had that in common. And so we could talk about the difficulty of that. But that village is so important. And I cannot tell enough women to find your village. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it will pay off in, forever. It'll pay off.
Right. And thank you to everybody that's helped out to the Bad Moms group. Getting after it. Makes a video. That movie's hilarious, I think, partially because there's so much truth in it.
Yes.
Right. Which a lot of those are, I think.
Yes.
So great things at GE.
Yep.
Really for a big chunk of our stay in the Richmond area.
Yep.
And now we find ourselves in the mountains of Blacksburg.
Yes.
A great opportunity. here, and how. So again, we're kind of going from smaller companies, giant company, to another smaller company, very innovative, doing great things. And so, what was your transition like with that? And knowing it was a tough one.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, I loved what I was doing in GE. I love the scope of it. And man, I had a great village of people there, leaders that I respected, a huge team, global team, amazing learning opportunities. And so you're like, well, Wendi, why did you leave? So that's the interesting part. I had done that for a while, and GE had changed their practice and how they were placing people. So when you first come to GE, you're like, well, I can go to any business and still stay, in Richmond,
right,
and continue to grow. And they'd kind of changed that. They wanted you to be with your specialty. So you kind of had to move. And the places that I would have had to have moved weren't places that I wanted to take the family. Like, they were big city places.
Gotcha.
So I also just wanted a different challenge. I would say have been on a leadership track. Because I love helping people to grow, and I love big initiatives and getting things done. And I just didn't, it's not that I didn't see that happening at GE, but there was just something I wanted that was different. I couldn't put my hand on it.
Right.
And one of the things when you look at CEOs, they're well-rounded, right? So they've done sales, they've done operations, they've done support, they've done implementations. They just have this well-roundedness. So there was an area that I wasn't necessarily getting or couldn't get at GE. So I was in a place where I was like, I need to do something else. And whenever I feel like I need to do something else, I always update my resume, because it does two things for me. One, it helps me to reflect on what I've done and how I've grown.
Right.
And it also gets me ready to talk to people and do that elevator pitch.
You mean the exercise of updating and remembering and revising
Yes.
and rewriting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Literally updating your resume. And I've always said I would rather give birth to a fourth child than update my resume. And the last child was not easy, but so I did that, and then a recruiter called from the Blacksburg area and said, actually they sent me a note on LinkedIn, and I usually ignore those.
Kind of a cold call LinkedIn thing. Yeah.
But it was like, hey, I see you're a former Hokie. There's a company in Blacksburg that's looking. And I think I said to him, what is in Blacksburg besides the college and bars? Because that was my experience with Blacksburg. Yeah. And so I, responded back, and we just started a conversation. And then pretty quickly, I was having a conversation with the CEO, and he really sold me on that vision of what they were doing. And they had good problems to solve.
Right.
But then it became, you and I started talking about it, and it was like, are we really going to move?
Oh, this might happen.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Are we going to move for my job? Mm-hmm. Right. And when Kevin and I are out in public, they look at Kevin like, oh, did you move here for the university? And Kevin's like, nope. We moved here for her job.
Right.
That's some mom guilt right there. But the mom guilt really didn't come until after we moved here. And then my 13-year-old wasn't super happy. Yeah. And he was like, can we go back to Richmond?
Well, yeah. When you have a middle schooler that's got the group of friends, but I think that's a thing too of, as a couple, as a woman, is looking at what's best for everyone's overall life, and balancing that, because just like on any team, not everyone's going to be happy with everything that happens, right? Yeah. So try and make it the best for the long term. And so I think we found that where we know there's good schools, there's good people. We knew the opportunity where we could live professionally was good. I was just, again, have a super strong woman leader that let me stay with the company, which is awesome.
Told you
I might start crying, right? Which is fantastic, right? So thank you for that. And, it was hard to not do this. And for you professionally to say, that is a pretty awesome opportunity to be able to lead. And I'm love the leadership deal. To see that opportunity and then go, we can do it with the kids. Our two little ones, if there's a playground, they're good. Yeah. And our oldest, he's working through it, but sometimes it's worth that And that's one thing, though, you and I think compromise, which is our number one word for our marriage of 18 years.
After the first year, that was our word.
Yeah. The first year's tough. Let's just be honest. We say that to everybody, I think. We're like, good luck. We'll see you in a year. Is just knowing, okay, we'll support them through, adjustment or whatever. But for us, it's here's what we're going to do. And we had to compromise anyway, because was it 5 months, 4 or 5 months? You were coming here every week. And so that's another thing too, is so when there's a great opportunity, you're not going to flip a switch and magically go poof, poof, you're in the new place. It's easy. So going through living apart where you're gone every week, kids still got to go to school. They still do things, right? Having that teamwork, right? To feel good about it, but knowing again down the road, it's worth, but at some point going, okay, let's go.
Move. So we were together because I was living in a 1-room apartment, not bedroom, 1 room. I think they call them studios.
Right. Yep.
And Kevin was at home trying to keep all the kids alive and the house clean because we were also trying to
we were showing it. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, that's the other thing from a leadership perspective and the process of kind of us getting there. One is that
I like how you'd have that in there.
Yeah. The company pretty much took anything out of the way that I could push back against.
Nice.
They pretty much baited either they're going to or not, because they kind of took care of everything else. Even the flexibility to not everyone move right away, that I would have to be going back and forth. But then that whole process of deciding to move earlier, also the market here in Blacksburg for housing specifically is not great. That's a whole nother topic we can bring up later.
Well, and we're comparing that to the Richmond, Virginia area, which is, there's just way more stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And various types. But yeah, so it's going from one huge market to a much smaller one. Yeah, it was a big deal.
But, we used our project management skills. We used several
we
online
had spreadsheets. It works.
It does work. Yeah, and we got it done. So now we're here in Blacksburg, and we sometimes still look out at the mountains and say, we live in Blacksburg.
That's right.
Yeah.
So your process is pretty awesome. I think it's a great track of finding out in school you don't want to do something, so switch, be proactive, change it. Opportunities fall down, but you look at it and say, okay, I got to make the best of this. Lean on other folks, seek mentors, take advantage, translate your skill set that's not just industry dependent, but that transcends really any industry, I think. Yep. And then, of course, prop that onto something and dive into it. Like you're talking about, look at the information security terms and this and that, and you got way more into it there. And then, as you advance, as you develop, as you're seeked out, right? People, sought you out, seeked. I think I'm talking like my 7-year-old sought you out. Then taking advantage of leadership opportunities. And, then going with them, but planning them out. And one thing on this show I think of, or at work I think of, and it's great guidance that you've given me, is when you are telling a story, when you're giving a presentation, when you're talking to somebody, ask yourself, for me it used to be, and still kind of is, when I would do like incident management response, it was, and then what, right? Because I'm always thinking, we're standing watch, and then what? Something blows up, and then, so for you, it's so what? Right? So we're pretty awesome. So I'm sure folks have enjoyed this banter. Your story is pretty awesome. You've worked really hard. So what progress can you help the new young woman, right, getting into the workforce, strive towards? And there's no, I would say, one roadmap, right? But
no.
Or folks in the same situation, right? Working moms that are professionals in whatever level, whatever job. So let's look at the brand new person, the brand new young woman on Women's Day, right? International Women's Day, getting into the workforce. So how can she make progress?
So I talk about all these different seasons. I call them seasons. So the woman that is early in her season, I really think it's a matter of finding something that you're passionate about. Because when you're passionate, you will do good things. You'll try harder. But I think it's also about seeking out mentors, as well as trying to get outside of your office. And this is something I've learned over
Oh,
the
right.
years. So, you will learn a set of things and you will work really hard in your office. If you ever don't love it, maybe there's a small season within your season, maybe it's tax season at work and you're an accountant. Um, Getting outside of your office and joining like women in technology groups
Right.
um, is huge. The couple things. One, it gives you different perspectives. It's a huge networking, and I like to call village building opportunity. But it also gives you additional leadership skills. So if you're in a job when you're young and you can't get those leadership skills or you can't get certain skills, if you join an organization like Women in Technology here in Blacksburg, we call it WOTech. That gives you leadership opportunities, project management opportunities. So it gives you the opportunity to try different things. So that I think would be my big recommendation for folks that are younger. If you're not exactly loving what you do, find opportunities outside of through different organizations to help you get additional skills.
Is there any, just to level set, right? Because that's another thing that's for leaders that's hard. Some folks don't want to do it because sometimes the level set is like what a coach told you that said you're just not an athlete,
Yeah.
right? Which may not be the best way to say things like that. Sometimes it's a dose of reality. Like, I remember it was like the last day of football season my senior year, right? And I played, but I knew I wasn't going to college. And coach was like, "Is there anything I can do for you?" I can talk to him. Like, "No, I'm good." Like that's all I needed to say. I knew I wasn't going anywhere. To your point of find something you love and get mentors and things like that and work your way up, right? And in this reality of different expectations for folks coming out of college right now, market's tough. I feel like the expectation should be you're going to have to work your way up. You're going to have to start from the ground up, right? It's similar to Andrew Smith. I talked about jiu-jitsu, right? He started laying mats down. Now he's, co-owner of a huge gym and tournaments and things like that. So in the workforce, for young women coming in, is there any reality where they're going to jump right to a senior director, COO job?
Yeah, if they own the company.
Right. Family handed down, right?
Yeah, or they
that's
build
true.
the company from an
Entrepreneurial,
entrepreneur perspective. Yeah. Because the other thing that's always been big for me too, and I probably didn't think about this when I was younger, but it's just how I was raised, is earning that respect, especially as a woman, especially as a woman who didn't have full technical chops. Like I knew enough to be dangerous and call BS on things, but especially one of my last teams at GE was incredibly super nerds, amazing, smart people. And I remember going to lunch after I'd shortly started the job and him asking me some questions. He's like, "Oh, you actually know some stuff." I'm like,
right.
He's like, "Okay, now I knew what I'm dealing with." But back to your question, I think, no, you should expect to work your way up because you're going to learn things that way. If you just go directly to like a senior director, one, I question the leadership there because they're probably setting you up for failure.
Right.
But also, like, don't do that to yourself. Don't set yourself up for failure.
And is that something you can look for? Because you talk about doing research, which is just good advice, before you interview or anything, look up the company. No, like, don't go in there going, I don't know, of what your company does or what the org chart is. Like,
big no.
You should have an outline of what the company is, what they do, what the hierarchy is, all that kind of stuff.
I would turn people down if they didn't do any research because I think they're lazy.
It is. I mean, especially now. So in 2020, companies have tons of information out there, whether it's on their site or you Google it and there's write-ups or, there's tons of stuff out there. So do your research.
Yeah.
And to that, you can see if there's a ton of high-level positions and the company has like 10 people, that's a top-heavy organization, right?
Yeah.
Which is part of what big companies do is they go, oh, remove layers, add layers, span of control, that kind of stuff. So to the point of it, and a bit ago with big companies when it was booming before the housing market, there were tons of big, right? You got hired with a big title because the economy was crazy. I mean, the economy is good now, but still, I mean, I think that's something to look forward to. What about for your peers, both kind of what you've taken progress-wise and then some advice you've given to your peers to help them make progress. So folks that have been in the game for a while, right, that are in leadership positions.
I think that's got to be around seeking specific feedback. And for women, that's usually asking for it. I think in this day and age, it's harder to give women feedback, like real honest feedback, for legal purposes, unfortunately, or people being afraid of that.
Right.
So I think as a woman, you have to seek specific feedback, and that means asking specific questions. How was I in that presentation the other day? How did my report come through? Did my email sound okay? You hear me on the phone with customers. Do I sound abrasive? Do I sound asking specific questions, or, finding someone that you'll be like, I have no idea what to ask. Maybe they're younger in their career.
Right.
So I think seeking that feedback, and then as you move up the ladder, there definitely are even less people to look up to. So you don't necessarily have somebody that you can aspire to be. So oftentimes it's looking outside, and also just taking some self-training courses, whether they're online courses. You see me reading all the time now. Like, I'm constantly reading and trying to learn to grow myself.
Right.
Because I'm not getting that like I was when I was younger in my career.
I mean, and so to that, being more seasoned professionally and asking more pointed questions seems like a maturation of your skills, of your ego, of your willingness to take feedback without going, oh, what? And that's not just women, but anyone.
Yeah.
But I think that sounds like a big thing to say specifically, like, how was this? And then actually take it, implement it, right, and not be offended by it or upset, or, and of course it depends on how you get the feedback too.
Well, yeah.
If someone's
Yeah.
an a-hole the way they give it. But yeah, that seems like awesome
But you
advice.
can learn from that a-hole feedback. Like,
Yeah, true.
I don't want to be like that.
Every opportunity, yeah. That's true. So you mentioned WOTEC, you mentioned Women in Technology. And there's other groups. And so you've been involved with that both in the Richmond area, here in Roanoke, Blacksburg. Tell us a little bit about that, and for folks in either of those areas, and are there other organizations you're aware of around the country? Because we're national, international here. This is how we roll.
Yes.
Particularly in France. So shout out France. A lot of French people listening. I didn't take French. Wendy took French, actually, in school. So how about the WOTEC groups in Richmond here, and then other places outside of Virginia?
So I got involved with Women in Technology in Richmond through RVA Tech because I went to the first conference that they had. I was so excited. It was like for women in technology.
Yeah.
So I was super excited about that. And I went to the first conference. And I think after that, like maybe 1 or 2 years after that, I started to get involved. Now, this is where I go back to my seasons. I wasn't at a place in my life, because I had kids, that I could like give a lot of extra commitments outside of work.
Right.
So I went, but then I wanted to participate and give back and help, because as I kind of was becoming more seasoned in my own career, I realized like the things that I had experienced, like women just weren't quite talking about as much. And I wanted to share that. Like I wanted to share just about being a working mom, and about, challenges that you have being the only woman at the table. So I started coordinating the yearly kind of big conference with them. So actually, even when I started here, I continued to be on the board for the last 2019 WOTEC event. So that's why I was going back to Richmond. And then when I came here, I went to a first event here. People were really excited about it. I don't think it had been as lively as ours. They were like, hey, we want to keep this going. We want to keep the conversation going. And this is good. And I was like, you're not already doing this? So I kind of raised my hand and said, I can help. Like, I've done this. Here's what we need to do. So the WOTEC maturity in Richmond is very different than the WOTEC.
Right.
And it's just a matter of time. I mean, it took us 8 years to get to almost 800 participants in our last conference.
Wow.
So now we're starting here, and we're dealing with numbers that are like more like 40 or 50.
Sure.
So.
And that's its own process there too, realizing you're going from a huge thing that's established
in a huge
to helping
area.
build a foundation. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because this area in general is just going through a lot of growth. We're trying to bring more companies here. So I just felt like this was an opportunity for me to give back here. To give, again, our goal right now is to build that village, to create a village where people, women and men, honestly, can come and support each other and learn from each other. So we can pick up the phone. This is what I miss right now with my village in Richmond. We still text a strong game, but, having somebody you can get a coffee or wine with,
right,
is huge.
Nice.
Yeah.
So get involved, right? So your professional development and personal really can happen, professional particularly at work, but outside of work. You'll have conversations, and I'm not good at this. This is one of the things I need to do better at, obviously getting out of the house and that kind of stuff, but networking with whether it's the PMI groups or, men in technology, which is really just every other technology group, I guess. But doing that as well.
Yeah.
But you'll have different conversations than you will when you're in the office with someone that's at the same company.
Yeah.
Because you get the different perspective, right? Of either what they do, good or bad, what you like or don't like. You're not in your office within earshot, right? So that's its own. That's its own bonus too, I think.
The other thing I would just throw a plug in there for really quick is if you are a man and you care about actually supporting and being an ally for women, go to those meetings. Unless it says women only,
Right.
all of them are open. Go and hear how you can help. Get a different perspective. But you're asking about other groups. So outside of usually like tech councils in the area usually have women in technology groups. There's other.
Who are those councils usually through? Like a metro chamber or like a.
Yes. Like
something,
here
yeah.
it's Roanoke-Blacksburg
Probably
Technology
Google
Council.
Tech Council in your area or something.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, if you Google WOTech, you can find some in your area for
nice.
sure.
Okay.
Women Who Code is another really strong organization that I love. They're also global.
Nice.
Now, they're focused on very specific, like, let me help you with tech skills. But it's still another village of women that are hands-on keyboard,
Right.
that are supportive and helping you grow. And they're doing some great campaigns this month. So if you follow them on Facebook or Twitter.
Nice.
Yeah,
And what's
great.
what's their name? Women Who Code?
Women Who Code.
Or WOTECH for WOTech if you look that up in your area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So if there's folks out there, young ladies, experienced women in
Any
the industry,
season of life.
any season of life,
Yeah.
you're on the LinkedIn, right?
Yes.
Can folks reach out to you there?
Yeah.
At Wendi, WNDI,
That's right.
Pannell, PANNELL. So, and, I think you'll be glad to mentor folks or answer questions or
Yeah,
things. Is that
absolutely.
cool? Thank you for everything.
Thanks, honey.
Happy International Women's Day.
Yes.
You took over the coronavirus spot. we'll follow up with that because everyone's getting in on that thing.
That's awesome.
So thank you everybody out there listening that has liked, followed, etc. Pretty awesome relaunch of the podcast because of you all that are listening. Great number 10 with my wife, who's number 1. Like how I did that. Thank you, family and friends, and all the mentors that Wendi mentioned, all our village, all our friends. You all know who you are. You've been to our house probably many times and vice versa. So thank you all very much. Anything you want to close it out with on this International Women's Day? Give you the last word there as a strong woman.
Oh, that's a good one. So International Women's Day this year, their focus is each for equal. And the saying is an equal world is an enabled world. So it's really talking about how are we going to celebrate women's achievements. So my action or takeaway would be that, tomorrow when you get back into the office, just, take a moment and recognize a woman in your office, give them a shout out, and help them to find their voice if they don't already have one.
That's pretty well said. Thanks everybody for listening. Godspeed.